YouTube viewers that we started a Mercury retrograde very close to Venus. I think they were like a degree apart when the retrograde started. And I went back through time to check the elemental water retrogrades that we had, where the Mercury retrograde was happening in water signs, because I was wondering, is it always with Venus? Because I know that Mercury is always in a Venus cycle. We always see Mercury close to Venus during her cycles, but I wasn't sure about Mercury, so I went back and checked. And we only had it in 2006 that Venus was actually present during the Mercury retrograde. So I was just like, oh, wow, interesting. So we have Venus with the Mercury retrograde now, and then we'll have it again in the fall.
Okay.
So I was hoping that you would share the thing that I'm so curious to know what you think is how the whole cycle going back to when this current one started and how, just what's been unfolding and what do you know about it? And what are you kind of, if you can take us from the beginning to where we are now, and then when we get to that Scorpio retrograde?
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here.
Yay.
Hey, hey, hey. Yeah. So there's so much to say, and I think that I want to begin with speaking to how I hold the astrology. So the way that I look at the astrology is a little bit different than some other astrologers because what I'm doing is looking at all of the sky story, all of the astrological aspects in relationship to the Venus cycle. So I see that overarching cycle as this energetic container that is the architecture of a very specific heroine's journey. So wherever Venus and the Sun meet, so back in March 22nd, 2025, the cycle that we're in right now, when Mercury was also retrograde in Aries, we have this theme of Aries. And so that moment, that 2 degrees where Venus and the Sun met, and then Mercury was very close by at 5 degrees of Aries, that is the container all the way through October 23rd, 2026. And so, what does that mean? Venus in Aries, the feminine in Aries, the feminine in the first sign, initiating fire. She's inviting us into leading from the heart and actually not leading from the head. So, it's really interesting the relationship with Mercury and Venus because it feels like I want to unpack that a lot more. But this blazing, bold, instinctual nature. And how do we move with that? But with the Venus there, we're not talking Mars. She's still attuned to other. She's not just, blasting forth. So Venus is always about relationship. First with ourself, which on our heroine's journey, we're invited to deepen our relationship with ourself and our personal power in Morning Star. And then in Evening Star with our social power, with our relationship with other. So we always are thinking about the relational. Yes. Oh, great, perfect. We're always thinking about the relational dynamics with Venus. Venus represents our feminine nature, our inner nature, what we can't see, feelings, intuitions, emotions, our values, what we love. That's somewhat invisible, but it's a feeling, right? We know what we love. If we feel it in our body. Whereas Mercury is the mind. Mercury is how we think, how we communicate, and so they're both planets that are inner planets. Mercury is the closest to the sun, and then the next is Venus. So they are going to naturally be in the sky together a lot of the time. But what you're pointing to here is that there's this alignment between the Mercury retrograde, where we're turning the mind around, while Venus is, in this case, March 22nd, beginning her cycle. So, might be like that bold, fierce, sassy Venus in Aries is like, drop the mind. I'm in charge. Like I'm ready. I'm ready to live in a world, to create a world where Aries isn't about war and violence and aggression, where it's about birth and life and protection of innocence. So that's what I was speaking to at the beginning of this cycle. And I think it's helpful to have the mind softened because the mind is the place where we're most easily controlled. where we're looking at a whole system and waking up to how much mind control is a part of the system. And so now we have, instead of the Aries, which is that first bold, bright, the first moment of consciousness of life being visible. And now we're having a dynamic when Mercury's retrograde and Venus is coming out of the underworld and starting the second part of her 19-month cycle in the last sign of Pisces, which is that dissolving, that going back into unity consciousness, that uh, changeable, mutable water energy, the mists, and this sense of dissolving that sense of identity that we have in Aries. And I want to say one more thing, and then I want to hear, what else you have to say. But I was listening to your video about Pisces and how it is the liminal, and how it is this dream body, or you said something, you called it something else, but that place that is between the worlds. And so we have this dynamic again where we have this opportunity to reconfigure with Mercury retrograde, reconfigure and understand how have we been unconsciously, subconsciously programmed in this realm, and how do we deepen into this greater trust of our heart,
Mm.
of our heart's wisdom, of moving from a deeper place within us that is beneath that mind control.
Mm.
And so I think one of the easiest ways to do that is somatically, to really feel into our body, to choose not to know with our head. I mean, I even do this all the time. I'm choosing not to know. I'm choosing to feel what's in my heart, and just literally, viscerally taking that journey from the head into the heart space, and then seeing what's true there, because oftentimes it will be different. My head has a whole agenda and a whole idea of things, but when I access that portal in the heart, that place where it's so integrative. And it's really this bridge between our own head and our own womb, between the cosmos and the earth. And really, I feel this place where we can awaken into what now I'm calling our feminine alchemy, our world building powers. That's quite a bit different than the new age idea of manifestation. So I'll pause there.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's so exciting. It's so exciting because it's like I really, like a lot of people really love my mind. Like I really lean on it so much. And I've noticed that there has been this very sharp turn where I'm like, oh, letting what I know somatically inform what I'm going to do and say and how. And it's tricky, right? Because especially with Venus being the realm of relational things, that there is a program that we, through the music that we've been listening to, through the movies we've been watching since we were little kids, there's a thing that has been embedded in our mind that has been the undertone of how we relate, what we think is beautiful, what we think we love.
Yeah.
Do you really like that Beyonce song? Do you really like it? Or did you just, is there a program that's like, oh, you're like going with it, but that it's not really true? So that has been something that I've been going through personally since like 2020, where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Did I really love that thing? And now what I'm hearing you say is that with this Venus cycle, we have an opportunity to really drop into the body and let the body inform our perception more so than it's our mind telling our body what we're supposed to be liking and doing.
The mind is so hackable. I mean, it's really time to understand that. Jason Christoff just came out with a film called Mind Control that I recommend for
Mm.
people that don't understand that. And in that, they do an experiment with these three influencers. And it's in the context of, oh, this guy's saying to them, I want help with my social media. Can you help me? And so he's showing them his social media feed, and he's showing them these images, and then he takes them to the studio, and they each go into a separate room, and they have all of these props that they can use, and he wants them to create content. And they all created the exact same images in their content, which we can all see in relationship to what he showed them. And it was, it wasn't even very deep. It was just like image, image, image. So we're so impressionable. Our mind is so hackable, but our heart holds the truth.
Mm,
Our heart wisdom holds the truth. And that's the heroine's journey. That
mm,
beginning of the heroine's journey, that morning star, it's that life, that desire to create a world that, whatever our particular gifts are, whatever our particular way of doing that, like whatever we want to create is sparked. And then we go through a process of deconditioning throughout
mhm,
that morning star, like a nana taking off the veils, taking off the
mhm,
vestments. It's a
mm.
process that allows us to release the falsity, release the conditioning, release the programming, and deepen into who we are. And then the underworld really steeps us. So we're just coming out of an underworld phase that began a little bit after think or a little bit before Thanksgiving. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so well, after Thanksgiving. So November 26th, Venus disappeared in the morning sky after being visible for, that whole 8 months. And she's re-arising now. I haven't seen her yet, but she's definitely visible. I'm seeing pictures. It's just been super cloudy here. So we're in a very potent time of re-emerging truer to ourselves, holding ourselves more as sovereign beings and being willing to represent that in our relationships because it's hard to, for me, as I see more of the truth of what reality is, and I think this is the experience a lot of us who are waking up, is that you become controversial because you point out the things just naturally. You point out the things that people don't want to talk about. That's the like, oh, don't talk about that. Let's just be in the top side world where everything was lovely and we create our own reality and we just have these soul contracts and somehow our soul just wanted to come here and have these lessons, like all of that new age programming that really doesn't match with now what we see, the horrors of what happens to children and war-torn places. No, who would choose that? There's something else going on here. That's not benevolent. And that's really to me, the big epiphany of the underworld is that we live in a hell realm. And if we're going to create a different realm, we have to look that in the eye and say, no more. We're not doing this anymore. And then we've got to break the mind control. And so this particular Mercury retrograde with Venus emerging from the depths is such an incredible opportunity to allow ourselves to be pierced by the truth of everything that's just been revealed and has been revealed for years, but now a much larger population is understanding how this realm works and that it's fueled on of the violation of innocence.
I asked a friend of mine who is very well, he's a theologian. I asked him like, "Hey, are we in hell? Like, is this actually hell?" Because that is really what I have been like in my quiet times and my meditations and everything. I'm like, and then it's like, well, I think it's both. I think it's like we are like in it all. And he was saying that it is really a choice, like what we are constantly reaffirming in our day-to-day lives, but that yes, they both exist here. So I find that interesting. And then with the Mercury being the part of us that is able to a make I talked about this briefly, whereas in medical astrology, Mercury rules choice points in the body, like when sperm meets egg. Is it going to stay? When they actually meet and they start going through the uterus, will the little villi, I can't remember the name of them, the little hairs in the fallopian tube, will it capture that
Mhm.
egg?
Mhm.
It's a choice point, and that Mercury rules over that within our body, and both options are there.
Yeah.
And so I think about that with the Mercury retrograde, with I'm just looking outside in the neighborhood and it's like I'm choosing how I'm perceiving this. And on days that I'm sad, it looks a different way than when I'm full of joy and like excited about what I'm going to try, what I'm going to test out, whatever. So I think with the Mercury retrograde that we're in, I feel like you're the expert. For me, I'm like I don't really know, honestly. Like, what is it going to be with all this new information that's come out? Like, how are the masses of people going to respond? Because, as you know, we've known this. It's not a new thing to us. The level of which it's like, I was questioning, like, oh, even that person, but I really like this person that's famous or whatever. And then now I'm like, okay, it's all of
Yeah.
them.
And it's a blessing to have had some time with it. I think people are really shocking their systems and they're shattering their psyches because they didn't have any time to integrate. We've
Mm,
had years of uncovering. I mean, I learned about sex trafficking in my early 20s when I read the book A Bond Between Women by China Galland. And I thought at that point, and that book pointed to, little girls being trafficked out of rug shops in Pakistan. It wasn't at all the level that we understand now. It isn't, as Ali Carter says, who I actually highlighted at the beginning of this Aries cycle, because I had connected with her work and I find in Syncing with Venus, oftentimes I'll really see energetically the women that are connected to the theme. And so this bold, bright young woman, now she's in her 30s, she was trafficked to the elite and she was speaking about the horrors that are coming out in the Epstein files, I think since 2018. And of course, everyone said she was crazy, right? It's like, what are you talking about? They're doing this to children. That can't be possible. So I really saw her in her young, bold, I'm doing this no matter what. And, she's really having to be on the run, because the powers that be don't want her to speak out. So, looking at that bold, bright willingness to be the lightning rod for truth, to be the whistleblower. And how does that inspire us in our own way to represent more, to say the thing, and I think there's a big call right now to men in men's spaces to take that Mars energy and use that for protection of women, use that for the protection of innocence, to be the one that says something
mm,
that's really important. And I love what you said about they're both here, the beauty and the hell, because I think we know from having a deep spiritual connection to nature and the cosmos that there's an exquisite reality here, but it's like there's an overlay. And this is something that's actually talked about in all of the ancient texts. They talk about this overlay, they talk about fashioning the moon, they talk about the beginning of the zodiac. And so there's something that happened that interfered with that pure experience of
mm,
being here, that what Eden and this memory that many of us have of it didn't used to be this
mm,
way, because we had the power from our feminine alchemy to create the world,
mm,
and we would never create this hell realm, we would never do that. And so somehow that got lost or altered along the way in the human experience. And humans are very trusting and very naive in many ways. And so the powers that be have really learned how to use our goodness against us, how to manipulate us, which feels like that's a lot of that Piscean energy, that mind control energy, that psyop energy, where really good people get hooked because now the sophistication of how to trick us is accelerating as time is up for these dark beings. The matrix is falling apart. We're in the age of Aquarius. We're at the end of the Kali Yuga. We're at the moment of all of these prophecies converging, including the prophecies of the Cathars who said they were coming back now, that this whole hell realm is ending. And when we make that choice to be the ones who are connected to heart, connected to body, connected to the earth, connected to the cosmos, when we're aligning ourselves, we're helping with that dissipation of what has been. But also those characters are gripping harder because they don't want it to end. And
Mhm.
so I totally agree. I mean, we can't deny that there is beauty here, but it's really like, is the mind in service to love, or is the mind doing its own thing? And when I started really looking at the alchemical traditions, I was like, wait, okay. So these are all based on Mercury. They're all her, the emerald tablets and Hermes, that's Mercury.
Mhm.
He's the messenger and he's tricky. And he's playing with that duality, and when you talk to people who are into non-duality, they can say things like, well, there's really no good and evil. It all depends, this kind of moral relativism. Like, well, in that culture, where they, butcher women's um, sacred parts. Well, that's, how they do it there, or something like that. And and so the mind is tricky in these kind of ways when things can be looked at this way or looked at that way. Whereas the heart pulse of a mother, as we know, there's no blurred lines when it comes to protecting what we love.
Mhm.
There's an absolute like uh, willingness to see the harm, willingness to see those who harm as what they are,
Mhm.
which is different.
How do you think, like I told people, I was like, oh, we're going to give some practical ways to use the
Mhm.
sky in our own lives right now. So if we could zoom forward a little bit to the fall when we have the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, which I'm already like, I have Scorpio in my seventh house, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
kind of thinking like, what could this possibly be? How the continuation of the story goes, and I know you and I had talked about this before with this being the last
Hmm.
Scorpio
Yeah.
Venus, and then
Yeah.
so for you and I being
Yeah.
born in the Scorpio cycle, like
Right.
how do we move
Right.
forward with no more of these Scorpio initiation points, and then
Mhm.
how people can connect with this as we're moving through. I say time is moving through our bodies, but as we are moving through time and time is moving through us, how can we, what practical Venus wisdom can we carry in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, I love that question. I just want to remind myself. So you're born into a Venus and Scorpio cycle, and you're a Venus and Aquarius, right?
Right.
For your Venus sign. Okay.
Yes.
And then your Mercury's in Aquarius? Your
My
Mercury's also in
Mercury
Aquarius.
is in Aries, and they are
Oh,
sextile each
okay.
other.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. And what degree of Aries is it being touched by this current cycle? Is it early Aries?
It, yeah, 5 degrees, and Venus is
Okay.
5 degrees of Aquarius.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So this cycle started at 2 degrees of Aries. So it feels like there's some more personal. It's really interesting that you're having this inquiry because there's some more personal relationship between your mind, your Aries mind, your pioneering mind, and this particular cycle. So I'm not surprised that you're wanting to explore this more. That's interesting. Um, okay, so I think that it's a time when those that have had the scorpionic initiations, like if you have Scorpio really strongly in your chart, um, or you were born into a Venus in Scorpio cycle, that would be one marker. There's a lot of markers, Scorpio moon, Scorpio rising. Like if you have really strong and you've had those underworld experiences, because there's some people that do not get that kind of life. They've really had a topside life. They've had it really good, and they don't understand, or we see a lot of this now with the more superficial kind of social media movement of the spirituality where everyone's a shaman, even though they haven't actually been through hell, where true shamans often literally go through something so that no one would want to go to. No one would sign up for it in order to develop the consciousness that understands how to move between the worlds, right? So those that have naturally had those initiations, we could look at these sexual abuse survivors. We could look at the people that are trafficked. Like, how do you transmute that kind of pain into purpose, into avenue for you to bring your deep gifts and to wake up the world that these things do happen? And until we see those shadows, till we bring light into those shadows, we're not going to create a different world. And we're going to just keep perpetuating this. We have to have that leadership, that Aries leadership,
Mhm.
that we're willing to take that action.
Mhm.
So I think that there's something about those that have those scorpionic markers that are really going to get like their final exam, because I think as we turn into the golden age, the age of Aquarius, as we really start to see these systems fall apart at a greater level, which they will, and then the new culture coming in, the new projects coming in, the new ways coming in that people have been dreaming about from the 60s, with the back to the land movement, like let's do this differently, but why haven't we been able to? Like 97% of intentional communities fail. And I was raised in one of those, and it definitely was not healthy. And there's this longing for it. And yet there's also this inability to do it. And what does that come down to? That comes down to an inability to work through conflict in relationships, Venus. So I really think that Venus is trying to show us, especially in the way that the Venus star points or the points of those cycles move together. When they move like Aries to Scorpio, that's an inconjunct, right? Those two signs are like, huh? I don't get you. Like what? You know? And that is the 5 points of that pentagram that she makes are in conjunct. So she's connecting the disconnected places. She's
Mhm.
showing us the map to bridge these gaps so we can actually collaborate at a very high level to create the new earth, to create the new paradigm, whatever we're calling that. And it has to do with the way that we relate and having that sovereignty ourself, and then being able to, as a sovereign being, collaborate with another to heal the codependence, to heal the people pleasing, to heal the trauma, because we've all been so traumatized in this realm, so that we can actually relate truly in the present time instead of out of a trigger and out of all these projections. Um, so I think that there's a deep reflection that can happen as we move out of the underworld. What ways have you been touched by that Aries energy, that feminine Aries energy, to be one who blazes a trail, to be a bit bolder, to be a bit more visible, to care less what other people think, because you're so full of what you understand and your medicine and what you're here to give, that you're willing to put yourself out there, because that's the blessing of Aries. Aries is just going first. Aries isn't looking back and being like, oh hey, was that okay, did you like that? They're just like, just do it. And so how are we applying that Aries energy of just do it into these arenas of our relationships and our projects that we want to start? And it's very much also this energy of the feminine entrepreneur who's not just in it for the money. She's in it to change the world in whatever way she is. She's in it to actually impact change. And one of the ways that we impact change the most is through having resources. And women have been historically under resourced and not able to just be like, yeah, I have this dream and I'm going to fund it. This is the first time we've had a taste of that. And so I think that there's something about a renewal of what was your heart's desire back at the equinox in 2025. What was it you wanted to create? And no matter how badly you got your butt kicked in the morning star through those trials and tribulations, what's true for you now about that? Like, has it changed? Has the true heart's desire of what you want to create changed in some way? And what part of it's still true? And what do you want to move forward with? What's real? What's true for you now about what you want to, where do you want to lead in your life?
Mhm.
Where is your leadership needed? So
Mhm.
I think the reflection, that's the mind piece that is incredibly helpful. Writing is incredibly helpful for this. Writing it out, where was I at? And that's the equinox. What did I want at the deeper level? Where am I at now? What have been the trials and tribulations?
Mhm.
And to really celebrate ourselves for the journey, that there, that's part of it. The failure is part of it. And we know that as entrepreneurs, you have to fail. You have to be willing to fail. And how are we doing with that? How much are we caught up with kind of that opposite Libra people pleaser, the opposite sign of Aries? And like, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. I just want there to be harmony. Like that's shadow Libra. Libra also has its very strong parts, but the Aries is kind of like this place where we're very focused and directed in what we feel is the move. So I think, especially during this retrograde, that is important and helpful. And also go out and look at the sky. Go look and drop your mind. Drop your mind. Get your bare feet on the ground and watch Venus. And if you can see Mercury nearby, awesome, and really get the codes in your eyes. It sounds kind of woo-woo, but I cannot tell you the kinds of changes I've seen in women that do that, especially the feet on the ground, barefoot. It's like it makes a circuit in our bodies. And when I came here to Mount Shasta, um, I actually met I guided a woman into watching Venus, and she was diligent and out there every morning and watching Venus over Mount Shasta. And her whole life changed. Her toxic marriage ended. She met her soulmate. I mean, I was just like, whoa, there's an example. And so there's an acceleration that happens that we don't have to understand with our mind. Our body understands it. It's like a remembering. So it's just like choosing not to know, choosing our heart, open mind, soft heart, and gaze. Allow the light to come in, feet on the ground, and just be. Not intention, not a ritual, none of that's needed. Just presence, open presence, and receive the light, and receive the beauty, and receive the breath, and just see what happens. Be in that more open space of it. I mean, to me, that's one of the most powerful practices we can do, even though it's not complicated. It's simple.
Yeah. One other thing I want to ask you, how, like people who haven't worked with you, and I would just want to mention for you and for everybody, I had studied Venus through Daniel Jamario, and he has a really cool perspective on the Venus cycle. You know him.
Yeah, I love
Um,
them.
yeah, I love him. And also a little bit with Kaylin when they were splitting their school. Um, that's a different story. And then the lady who wrote the book, who I think is one of
Ariel
you,
Gutman.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I love her book, and and it seems like from my perspective, you kind of have a little bit of
Hmm.
what I learned from Daniel and what I learned from Ariel
Hmm.
Gutman, but you do it different.
Yeah,
And so, I just want to mention that from you, from what I've learned from you, that really got it more in my body.
yeah.
And I love that you recommended that people wait a whole 8 years of the Venus cycle before they really start to like teach about it. Because it really takes that long of working with Venus to get it in your body. And I think that that body piece made all the difference in my understanding of the Venus cycle. And so, what I would like, if you wouldn't mind explaining to people how, and you did at the beginning, how you work with Venus in a broader sense of like in the
Yeah,
world, but like with people, when you say if
yeah.
you're getting in one-on-one with me,
Hmm.
uh, kind of what you are bringing out of the person when you're introducing them to their Venus, however you call that.
Yeah.
That, and then are you still doing that sale? You had a sale report
I
because
would
I was like,
I would still do that sale. It's $200 off an activation for anyone that reaches out to me from this live. You've got it. It's no
okay,
longer available for anyone else. But if anyone reaches
okay,
out to me from this live,
awesome.
$200 off your first session.
That's so cool because I think that that is going to, when I learned about my Venus from Daniel,
Mhm.
way back, I think that was probably 2013, it really clicked and it really
Mhm.
took off. I wrote a book. because Venus in Aquarius, I've always kind of felt not so feminine in a way of like what I thought femininity was. But then once I was like, oh, I'm in a Scorpio phase and it's Venus in Aquarius, and my mind is the brilliance. It is the beautiful thing about me. And that really, as soon as I heard it, I was like, my whole life made sense. And I
Yeah.
was like, I have always been this beautiful thing that I was like downplaying because I wanted boys to like me, and boys don't like smart girls, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that you say that because it does bust us out of these boxes that we've been put in about what is feminine and what is beauty. A Venus and Aries woman is going to have a totally different experience of her feminine than a Venus and Pisces woman, for example. And so I call it, I just started calling it the Venus design, which is the five dimensions of Venus, starting with the sign, which is more who we are as a human woman. So we have both the gifts of that, the qualities of that sign, and we have the shadows. And we can really look at that in our life. We can see how, oh, yeah, I'm a Venus and Scorpio, and I have this depth and this potency. But also, yeah, I can hang on to resentment. I can have that stinger. I can have that distrust. So it's a great reflection to see and to know what qualities to cultivate. Because if we're all trying to just cultivate the qualities that culture tells us are feminine, it's not going to feel true. And we know that the most magnetic move that we can make as women is to be ourselves and to be in our bodies. That's where our magnetism comes from, not from trying to be anything other than what we are. So there's something about Venus and her cycle that takes us beyond that sign energy, that really takes us into our sacred purpose. So we look at the sun as the inspiration. I don't see the sun as personality, it's too general for that, but it fuels us, it feeds us. And that I think might come from, I believe that comes from Daniel's work as well. So the teacher that I studied with for 5 years and also did this whole somatic piece of body of work was a student of Daniel Jamario and had kind of made some shifts in that work and ended up being a real exploiter of women. So I went through that, and I don't even feel like I can name the lineage or name the training because I don't want any more women to find him because he's still out there and um, using his astrology work as a way to bring women into his world and exploit them in all kinds of ways. So um, I didn't find Ariel until I'd already been years into my own process. And I was like, yes, this is so amazing what she's doing. But at that point, I couldn't change what I had discovered to match with Daniel's map or even my teacher's map. I'd like gone beyond, which was the blessing of that. Like I would have just been his student if that break hadn't have happened and I hadn't have found my own way. And my own way came from a bit of an obsessive scorpionic, Scorpio really is on the case, and because my own life had so many underworld things happening. I married a narcissist and I had to co-parent with him for 20 years. And, this kind of energy in your life that you learn how to strengthen. I really had to tap into that Scorpio resilience and to find that power of love in these very difficult situations. So I was already on the case of paying attention and contemplating, which is again the mind. So my mind being in service to this purpose of understanding the Venus cycle on the ground in my body, like, oh, okay, now we're in a Scorpio cycle. Okay, now we're in a Capricorn cycle. What are the themes? How is this affecting me? And so it was that on the ground contemplation an experience that really shaped me understanding these five dimensions, how important they are. So the Venus sign, the sun as inspiration, the Venus cycle as the container, which takes a little bit of just rearranging our brains to understand it, because that moment of Venus and the sun meeting closest to the earth, it's just a moment, for the cycle 2 degrees of Aries, and yet it contains the entire heroine's journey. 9.5 months of the morning star, that whole gestation of gestating who we are as an initiated woman, and then 9.5 months of bringing that wiser version of ourselves into the social realms. and really seeing like that contains a whole cycle. So that's a bit different than that halfway point, that 9.5 point saying we're in a new cycle. That didn't make sense to me,
Mhm.
even though, that's more of how Ariel maps it. So I really found my own map through my lived experience and through my own somatic understanding of really feeling what is each arising invitation. The larger invitation of the cycle, we're in a Venus and Aries cycle. It is time to allow ourselves to come forward, especially an evening star. We got this momentum for the next 8 months to create, to recalibrate. What did I want to create at the beginning? How was I changed by the trials and tribulations? What did I learn? Okay, and now what do I want to bring to the world and find those collaborators and find those dream clients and have that magnetism from being truer to who I am and bring it forth into the world. It's a 19-month experience, not a 9.5 month experience to complete it. So that container, it's almost like the mother energy or the inspiration, like we're in a book, a 19-month book. And Venus is like, hey, sister earthlings, you want to go on a heroine's journey? You want to learn more about the Venusian consciousness in Aries for this, for this cycle? Oh, next one will be Scorpio. Yeah, I do. And here's the crazy thing is that women who are working with the sacred feminine may have no idea what cycle we're in. They may have no idea the dates. And yet when we start diving into their chart, they know. They're doing the bold thing. They didn't know they were in a Venus and Aries cycle, but somehow energetically they're receiving the message. So this
Mhm.
shows us that this is deeper than the head. And then when they begin to map it and go, oh, whoa, wild. Oh, that's why I did that. And oh, this is my native cycle. It gives this incredible permission because I see that moment where Venus and the sun meet closest to the earth. We're on the earth, it's like very intimate as being, you know, very pure, a very pure expression of that sign energy, of that consciousness. Kazemi, heart of the sun.
Mhm.
There's no shadow. Venus is love, connection, relationship, sensuality, values, what we like, money, as you said. And the sun is illumination, light, energy. There's no negatives there. So there's no
Mhm.
shadow there. It's this purity. And so when we begin to cultivate that, and women come together who are in like that same group who share a cycle, there's often a real sense of kinship with women that are born into the same cycle. It's more like a connection to the qualities of our spirit.
Mhm.
It's our higher self, like what some people might call whatever the words are. And so that's really important to not just know it and go, oh yeah, thank you very much for the reading. And then I see them 2 years later and they're like, oh yeah, what was that? Okay, you didn't get it. If it's not in your body, if you're not contemplating it, you didn't get it. And that's why I don't even call what I do readings. It's more like this initiation process and then really working with women leaders, women visionaries on a 6-month journey. So we can dial in her 5 dimensions of her Venus design, and then she can be in that contemplation of cultivating more of who she is, and then being able to decode, well, what is the invitation now? In the
Mhm.
sky. Like, oh, okay, oh, now we're in underworld. Okay, time to tuck in. Okay, now we're emerging in the evening star. Venus is in Pisces. She's exalted in Pisces. She's so compassionate here. Do we need to forgive ourselves? Do we need to forgive others? If that's true, not forcing in some kind of new age, well, I should forgive or well, I should be grateful. But what's true? And like that ability to soften into those more Piscean places, the unity consciousness before the burst of her going back into Aries, which is going to happen in a few days, March 1st.
Mhm.
It's going to feel like, whew, it's on because
Mhm.
she's returning to that original sign that she began the cycle. And this always happens when she comes out of underworld perfectly. She
Mhm.
returns to the same sign very quickly after she comes out of underworld that she started the cycle in.
Mhm.
And so you're a new woman. I'm a new woman than we were on March 22nd, 2025, because we're on our path of growth.
Mhm.
and we're shedding what's no longer true and we're deepening into what is true.
Mm.
And so just to like celebrate and claim that we get to be new, we get to rebirth. And right now it might be confusing, especially with Mercury in retrograde. That's okay. It still could be Mercury. We're still in eclipse season. We're in between eclipses. So to know that it's not really time for it to be clear and forward yet,
Mm.
like to allow that stirring and not knowing and dreaming and feeling, and maybe more downtime, maybe more rest, and to know that that's coming. So we're tuning in with that heart energy, that flame. Okay, I want to do this, but maybe not quite yet, and that's okay to be in the energetic in between time, but to also know what's coming and that it's going to be building. And so not to give up hope and go, oh, it didn't work out, I tried that thing last year and it didn't happen. Well, that makes sense. And so we can recalibrate, we can reiterate, and that might be the exact thing that's going to bring us the greatest success in the evening star. So not to give up.
Mm. So that is a for Mercury retrograde, that always comes up in my mind. Like, well, what was I doing in that previous
Mhm.
cycle that, and let's try it again. Let's bring it back out. Or, and
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not even, you don't even have to really try, because the things that are circling back, even if it's just a dream or you overheard somebody talking about it, those things that are circling back are because they're worth it. They're worth giving it another look and
Yes.
maybe doing it again in a
Yeah.
different way, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's really doubled in this cycle because we have this Mercury synergy, Mercury
Yeah.
retrograde synergy, along with these key moments in our cycle. Venus starts the cycle, Mercury's retrograde.
Yeah.
Venus is coming out of the underworld, Mercury's retrograde. And both of these points, are incredibly powerful part of the zodiac, moving between the final sign of Pisces and
Mm.
the first sign of Aries. And there's a whole lot of other action there, like Neptune and Saturn. And yet I find that hardly anyone's talking about the cycle that holds it all. I go, oh, wow, the Neptune Saturn conjunction is 2 degrees away from where Venus started this cycle. Oh, Venus is coming out of the underworld and she's conjunct the North Node in Pisces. It's like Venus is always there being like, hey, it's about the feminine heart energy that's been, because it's been so oppressed and abused and denied, because the powers that be are terrified of our feminine power. Because when we reclaim that as women, we're going to totally redream this world and they will not have the control anymore. And so I feel like that's the conversation I want to hear. I get excited when people are talking more about the Venus cycle and seeing that as a major, major point of transformation, not just about like who you're going to date. And this is the beauty of what Ariel Gutman did, because she's really has inroads into the whole astrological community and she has a lot of respect in that community. And so she brought the Venus cycle in as a player in the bigger scheme. Everybody's like Pluto, Pluto, Pluto because it's so slow. But the Venus star points, those points where she begins the cycle, also have a very slow motion. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like 130 years to move
Right.
backward through an entire sign,
Yeah.
or I think it's just over 100 year. I'd have to do the math, but with this Venus and Scorpio cycle, so what are we, 2025? I think it started in 1925. And
Because
so
it'll be like 2 degrees, right? It'll be like it was 28 and then it's going to be, isn't that how it
it's
goes?
about, yeah, it's not exactly two, always like sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, but yeah, it's
Okay.
the slow-mo movement backward
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
that sign. And
Yeah.
so, there's a lot about the Venus cycle that I think is being remembered because the original feminine cosmic inspiration was Venus before the moon. And we have a lot of stories, ancient stories about the time before the moon. And then these
Mm.
references in the ancient texts of when the moon was fashioned, and
Mm.
so it's like, that's gotten me very curious about the relationship between Venus and the moon And I used to be a major moon worshiper. So I think it's very different when we come into something, I would say in our heroine's journey of deconditioning, and we've had that identity. We've been the one that did that thing. We've had that political stance. We've had that spiritual belief. We've been inside of it. It's a
Mhm.
very different experience when we've been inside of it and then we see through it and we drop it than
Mm,
if we just with our mind go, oh, well, um, I think the moon's weird and I'm not going to do anything with the moon anymore. Like that's more of a mind parsing things out. But when it comes from your body experience, like as I started syncing with Venus, I noticed I didn't like to be in the moonlight. I didn't like that quality of that light because this diamond light of Venus was so expansive for me.
mm,
And I feel like she's really showing us how to radiate. She's
mm.
showing us we are stars. Put your arms out, put your legs out. We're a star, And we have this radiance that has been dimmed by the trauma of our lives. So she's like bringing us forth as the sister planet.
Mm,
The moon, not so much for me. And then I started doing these deep dives into like the North cultures. And before there was the whole moon culture, which I think a lot of women, when they begin to wake up spiritually, they really go into that more moon place and, I did that for a long time too. But when you look at the myths coming out of the North, before there was the moon worship, there was the worship of the constellations in the North,
mm,
the
mm,
polar feminine religions. And so I think we just need to be very open-minded and allow our bodies to show us and tell us what's true and what's not true. So I never would tell another woman what to do or not do, but I would say, notice. Notice how you feel. Notice what your body's telling you. Because in astrology, the way that I learned it, the moon is our conditioning. It's our patterning. It's our mother lineage. It's everything we inherited. Do we really want to orient to that every single month? To our history, to our patterns, to reactions? We know what happens on the full moon. Personally, I don't. And so I created that calendar with the new Venus portals where Venus is coming together with the moon. And I see Venus as this evolutionary feminine energy bringing us into the present time now of who we are, not tying us to our history and our patterns. And they're coming together as this opportunity to say yes to the evolution, to see what the pattern is and to rewrite the story, to transmute it, to show up more in the present time of who we are.
I love that. That's amazing. I heard you saying that a couple years ago, or maybe it was, yeah, a couple years ago, you had that school online. And that really was like, oh, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not really doing so much with the moon anymore because I was like, yeah, that really hit. And also just because of like doing ancestor work and realizing how much of that is like sticky past stuff that is like makes it harder to really fully become who I
Mhm.
am in the present
Mhm.
and like what's available as opportunities. So
Mhm.
that moon connection with the ancestors
Yeah.
really, I'm like, it's cool and I'm respect and all that, but also like that was a choice that I could make.
And there's that choice again. It's like, do I really want to take on all my ancestral trauma and have to heal that for my whole line? Do we really need to do that? That's again part of the programming. So the
Mm,
other thing that I wanted to say before, I know we're kind of going long here, but I saw this right before our live and I was like, oh my goodness, I gotta say this, especially because we're in this Piscean energy, and there's so much around that is part of how we get duped or confused or manipulated in this reality. And so something came up in my feed about the maritime law. So when you begin to awaken to what this realm is, you understand that there's legal and then there's natural law, and that
mm.
whole legal system is part of the corruption. And that I don't, have you been down that rabbit
Yeah.
hole? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So thinking about the maritime law and how that's about the waters, and how that's about part of the control system by really keeping us in this confusion about who we really are. People are like, I'm going to be a citizen and fighting to be a citizen, not knowing that a citizen means, in that language, in that code, that you are basically an employee of the corporation of the United States, and that that has to do with our money system. So I'm curious, if there's going to be um, some kind of greater understanding of that in this Mercury retrograde, in that deprogramming of the legal as opposed to the natural law, and the way that we used to, not have um we kind of tend to think of like, oh, we're better off now than we ever were. But when we dig deeper, no, a lot of our ancestors, if you go back far enough, they really did have this connection and this understanding, and especially the women had the connection to their power and the feminine alchemy, and this ability to change reality, this ability to participate in reality. They were the weavers, they were connected to the three fates and the Norns, and this whole tradition that comes out of the North, where the moon is never considered feminine and the moon is never considered benevolent. The wolf is howling at the moon to protect from the moon. So anyway, I've been listening to this woman who's living up there in the Arctic named Ola Wolny, and she's been talking a lot about these kind of things and really awakening my mind. And this whole thing about the maritime law and the way that we've been duped into giving our power away, thinking that we're working and operating in an empowerment, but actually that we're again another pawn in someone else's game. So
Well, and
we'll see.
also just not even knowing that that was a thing. So like me, my son, he's 13, he just turned 13. When he was born at home, so there was no paperwork. There was, he was natural. And then we had to make the choice, his father and I. We both knew about this. We
Oh,
both knew
wow.
about,
When he was born, you knew about this?
yeah. Yeah, so
Wow.
we knew about it and we were like, "Oh, what do we do?" Because if you want to get him in all the things you want to do with your kid, you
Yep.
have to have a social security number, you have to have the birth certificate. He didn't have a birth certificate. He didn't have a social security number for a few days, and we sat and we talked about it, and we were like, we're not equipped to
Yeah.
deal with the complexity for
Right.
ourselves because we are citizens. We haven't uncitizened ourselves.
Right.
So we went ahead and did that. But I'm curious because of Uranus being at 27 Taurus right now,
Mhm.
and then making that final journey through Taurus, entering into Gemini for the last time for 86, 87 years. I'm thinking that that is going to be something with the money for sure, with our resources. And so now that you're mentioning this about the maritime law and during this Mercury's going to be in Pisces until like April
Mhm.
2nd or
Mhm.
April something. It's
Yeah,
going to
maybe
be there
that's,
for a while. And so I'm curious now too. Maritime
yeah.
law could be
Yeah.
coming. Like if more people knew about it, would they be cool with that?
Well, I mean, I think what you were saying about what you and your partner decided, and Mercury will be in a Pisces till March 29th. Is like, how do we it's a game. Like, look at the Masonic chessboard, look at the black, look at the white, look at the way they have people just in a tizzy about being on the Democratic team or the Republican team. Is like
Mhm.
learning how to play the game, which is like, okay, well, we're not equipped to totally go out of the system, but we're gonna figure out how to navigate between these two worlds, which is what a lot of people are doing, and when they're getting into the natural law and learning how to play the game consciously,
Mhm.
because we're in the game. We might as well wake up to how to play it consciously.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of opportunity of undoing and like softening our old beliefs in the Mercury retrograde. And then, by March 29th, Mercury's going to go into Aries. Let me look at that chart really quick. Um, it's like, oh, I might be in the wrong. Sorry, I was in the wrong year here. I was like, wait, that was 2025. Okay. Mercury doesn't go into Aries until April 14th. Is that what you just
April.
said?
Yeah, well, I thought it was April. I wasn't sure if it was the second or, but I
Yeah.
knew it was until
Yeah,
April.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, in April. Okay. So Mercury is going to go into Aries. And again, we have the opportunity for that rebirth, rebirth of our mind, rebirth of our ideas, rebirth of like, how do we navigate this system consciously, strategically, and really using our mind to that end. Once we understand the lay of the land and how much we've been duped and that what we haven't known and, what's all getting uncovered is like, that's what I get excited about is like, okay, how are we going to reorganize now that we know and strategically play the game the ways that we need to play the game while we're reclaiming our power and cultivating these qualities of who we are as, heroines or creators or, what I like to say heroines, but whatever word works for us to really be agents because it really is the women who are connected to their hearts that I feel have a critical role in the culture that comes next after this.
Hmm. And for men, how do you see men holding their Venus?
Mm. Well, I think men that have a healthy Venus have a healthy desire to protect innocence, to protect women, to support women. And
Mhm.
that's really what's been lacking, and I'm seeing a lot in the town that I'm in. There's a big abuse scandal coming out of a man who ran a very groovy cafe in Sebastopol, who's, multiple women are coming forward saying that they were raped by him. And men are coming forward and being like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I haven't spoken up when other men are saying things about women when there's hasn't been that agency to protect. And of course, we're also ending this Chiron in Aries. Like, Chiron goes into Taurus, I think in June maybe or something like that. Like we're coming to the end of really looking at the wound of the masculine, which is another reason why this Venus and Aries cycle is so powerful because she's bringing us the answer to that is that protecting out of love, protecting
Mhm.
life instead of being silent or participating out of some kind of peer pressure to like be a man and go along. I think a man that has cultivated his own Venus has a reverence for the feminine. That's right there. That's just the litmus test. So if he's still degrading women, he's still degrading his own Venus. He hasn't developed that part of himself. So I hope more of that happens too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess we should get going, but I'm like I want to hold that because of, I've been in a relationship for almost a year now. We started right around the beginning of it was like March 22 kind of area.
Oh,
Yeah, we
interesting.
started like
Wow.
taking a kind of friendship into a different territory right around that time and then making it official like during some crazy astrology with Saturn and Venus being together on the North Node. Do you remember that in April? It was like April
Oh
5th,
yeah.
something like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yep.
And so I've been like thinking about that, like how to inspire his own Venus within his body to open through my openness, through my connection with Venus, and through embodying Venusian qualities to, without my words, just with my presence, to activate his Venus wisdom. That's kind of been something that I'm like, how do I inspire that with him, within him, without words? So it's been a lot of like massage and facials and like cranial sacral therapy, just like intentionally holding his body and with that idea of like for me too to be able to activate my Mars through
Yeah.
our presence with each other. So I think
Yeah.
for that is kind of my thing is the
Yeah.
Venus Mars connection thing and with our
Definitely.
bodies. So I'm yeah, just
And that's so cool because Venus went direct on April 12th. So as you were coming into that, she was so slowest, getting ready for that turnaround, that happened April 12th in 2025. And so I think what you're saying about the presence is spot on. It's not about the doing, it's not about, this world of social media spirituality, like showing it and doing all these curated rituals and wearing these certain clothes. That's not it. It's really about the presence. And when we know our own Venus codes, our own Venus qualities, from our chart, from these 5 dimensions, and we're consciously cultivating them, and we're honoring what they are, whether it's Aquarius or it's the Sagittarius adventurer or it's the Cancerian nurturer. We're honoring those qualities within ourselves. We increase that presence, that magnetism, and we're creating change without doing anything, saying anything, making a big show of it. Our presence alone is actually activating activating the needed feminine energy in wherever we are.